Hello everyone, it's Keagan here. I'm back with another video for you guys. And today I'm bringing you guys another edition of Keagan's movie reviews once again. And today's episode I'm going to be talking about a film franchise. Well, this is going to be the first part of this little series I'm doing, because there's a lot of movies in this film franchise that I'm going to be talking about. So because of that, I'm going to have to split this into several installments. And the films in question I'm talking about are the James Bond movies. And yes, there's quite a bit of James Bond movies. There's a total of 24 James Bond movies, plus 2 unofficial James Bond movies, which are You Only Live Twice, which came out in '83, I believe, and Casino Royale. Not the Daniel Craig one, but the film from 1967. I will also be covering those in this series, but those two will be getting their own video in this little series. So I'm going to try to talk about all the James Bond movies within, I'd say, 7 parts max, with the 2 unofficial James Bond movies and probably the last part. But before we get started, there are a few things I need to say before we get on with today's video. As I mentioned before, this is going to be a 7-part review. So the next part might not come out next. It might come out probably 1 or maybe 2 videos after I do this review, but it'll be coming out eventually. And I'm going to try to cover at least 4 or 5 movies in the series per video that I do, which today we'll be talking about 4 Bond movies, and I'll try to talk about 4 or maybe 5 in the next installments that I do. And originally I was planning to review all the James Bond movies by decade, but I think that was going to take a little too long to do, so I've decided to do it 5 or 4 movies at a time. And yeah, and I'll be reviewing them all in order of when they were released, with the 2 unofficial Bond movies separately, which those will be in the last part like I mentioned before. And I know one last thing before we start. I know I talked about No Time to Die back in season 3, which at the time when I reviewed that movie, that was after I saw the film in theaters. I'm actually going to talk about that one again in the later parts we do, because I haven't seen the film since I saw it in theaters, but I plan to revisit it while I revisit all the other James Bond movies. But yeah. But other than that, I think that's all I have to say. So I've rambled on for too long. So anyways, let's not waste any more time, and let's get on with today's video. Oh, the James Bond movies. Some of the best and most iconic spy action movies of all time. They've been doing these for over 60-something years, since the first movie came out back in 1962. And over the years, James Bond has been played by many different actors over the years, from Sean Connery, Timothy Dalton, Pierce Brosnan, Daniel Craig, and a few others. There's no denying that James Bond is one of the best spy characters in fiction. Now, half of these Bond movies are actually based on a series of books that were written by Ian Fleming. I haven't read any of the novels that some of these Bond films are based on, but maybe someday I'll check them out. But there's been so many James Bond movies over the years. Some of them great, some of them pretty good, and some are just okay. So in this part, we'll be talking about the first 4 James Bond movies from the 60s, and all of them starring Sean Connery, or as many people call him as the OG Bond. So let's not waste any more time, and let's talk. Starting off with Dr. No, which was the one that started it all. This one was directed by Terrence Young, who would also direct some of the other Bond films that came out after it. And it was originally released in the UK on October 10th, 1962. And this is what made Sean Connery best known for as the original James Bond, and this was the one that started it all. In this film, James Bond is on a mission to Jamaica to find to find out what happened to two colleagues who went missing, and find out what's disrupting the American space program. And while along the way, he faces off goons that are members of Spectre, an evil organization that are determined to rule the world by any means necessary. And later on, and while on his mission, he finds some allies, and he faces off against the evil Dr. No, a big member of Spectre. And basically, that's the story of the film in a nutshell. Now, I don't really have a whole lot to say about this movie, but I must say it's pretty good for its time, and kind of ahead of its time when it came out back in '62. It's got some good action. It's got some good fight scenes. The set designs and the production value to this movie is really good, especially for its time when it came out back in '62. And all in all, it's a really, really fun film. I thought it was kind of funny though in the movie at one point when James Bond is sleeping in a hotel and there's like a poisonous spider that was put on his bed. He quickly gets out and all the intense music is playing. He just fucking kills the spider. I don't know why, but I thought that part was kind of funny. But it may not be the strongest film in the series, but you got to give it credit. It was the one that started it all. And there would be many sequels to follow, years to come and decades to come, especially different actors that would later play Bond, of course. But this was the first one that started it all, and it starred Sean Connery, which is probably what he's best known for, being the original James Bond. But all in all, it's a fun movie. I don't really have too much else to add to it. So we'll move on to the next one really quickly, but I'm giving Dr. No a 7.7 out of 10. Now we move on to the second film, From Russia with Love, which was again directed by Terrence Young and starring Sean Connery, and was released on October 20th, 1963, so this film came out a whole year after the first movie. And this is a pretty good follow-up, but we'll get to more on that in a moment, but we'll get into the story really quickly and then my thoughts on it. In this film, Bond is on another mission, this time to retrieve a Russian decoder device that is codenamed Lictor, or something like that. The device is stolen by Spectre, and Bond is on his mission to retrieve it before the device could be used to potentially cause another war in the world involving Russia and maybe the West. While on the mission, Bond falls for a Russian bombshell who is part of an assassination plot. While along the way, Bond faces off against Spectre once again. And, that's basically the story of the film in a nutshell. This is a pretty good sequel. I had a lot of fun with this one. Much like the first film, it's got some good action. I love the fight scene on the train with Bond and one of the main villains in the film, who I kind of forgot the name of. I thought that part was pretty cool. And it's got some good music in it, like the first film does. I think all the Bond films have great music, especially the ones that I wasn't a fan of. But it's got some good action, and Sean Connery is great in it, of course. And all in all, I thought this was a pretty good sequel. I don't know if I would say it's as good as Dr. No, but hey, I still really enjoyed it. And it's definitely one of the best films in the series, I'd say. And yeah, I don't really have too much else to add, so we'll move on to the next one really quick. But I'm going to give From Russia with Love a 7.5 out of 10. On to the third film, Goldfinger, which again was directed by Terrence Young and was released on September 20th, 1964. So this was released 11 months after the previous film. And this one I know is widely regarded as one of the best Bond films of all time. And some argue it's the best Bond film, while some say Casino Royale is the best Bond film. Well, depending on who you ask, of course. And this one's definitely one of the more memorable films in the series, but more on that in a bit. But onto the story of the film. In this film, James Bond is on another mission, this time to look into a gold smuggling scheme involving magnets that's being ran by a guy named Arik Goldfinger, who his last name is the title of this movie. And he seems like a guy who's just a wealthy man who's obsessed with gold. But little does Bond know he plans to dissolve the gold at Fort Knox to potentially destroy the economy in the West. So of course Bond is on his mission to stop him, as Goldfinger, as you probably guessed, is another member of Spectre. And yeah, that's basically the story of the film. As I mentioned before, I know this one is regarded as one of the best Bond films of all time, and is arguably the best Bond film of all time. Well, I'm not sure if I would agree if it's the best Bond film of all time, but it is one of the best Bond films in the series, and maybe the best one out of the James Bond movies with Sean Connery. And this one's pretty memorable. One of the memorable aspects of this film is Goldfinger's sidekick, Oddjob. He's the guy with the top hat that has like a saw or something. Like there's a part where he throws his hat in front of a statue, cuts the statue's head off. And yeah, he was a pretty cool side villain. And Goldfinger was a great villain too. And there's, much like the other movies, it has some good action, and the set designs are really, really good. Although I don't think these movies were actually filmed in America. I believe they recreated Fort Knox, as it wouldn't be filmed in the real one, I don't think. But again, this was a really, really fun film. And according to IMDb, this was the highest grossing movie like when it came out. It made a lot of money like when it first came out, and was in the Guinness World Record at some point. I don't know if it still is to this day, but it's not the highest grossing movie of all time, of course, because that title was taken a long time ago. But yeah, that's pretty interesting. But it's a really, really fun film. It's definitely one of the best James Bond films in the series for sure. I like I said before, I wouldn't agree with it being the best one in the series of all time, but it is still a great James Bond film. It's definitely one of my favorites in the series too. But all in all, it's a really, really fun film, and I don't really have anything else to add, so I'm gonna give Goldfinger an 8.2 out of 10. All right, we're going to talk about one more James Bond movie, and then we're going to call it a day. So we're going to end off today with Thunderball, the fourth film, which was again directed by Terrence Young and was released on December 20th, 1965. So this movie came out a year and 3 months after the previous film. And I think this one's one of the more underrated Bond films, well, in my opinion at least. But more on that in a moment. But onto the story. This time, Bond is on another mission to retrieve 2 nuclear warheads that were stolen by another agent of Spectre named Emilio Largo, who basically got the nukes and is basically holding the world ransom he's holding the world hostage to basically get nations to pay for Spectre, I believe is what it was. It was something like that. So of course Bond is on a mission to stop him and retrieve the nukes before one of the warheads could be launched in somewhere in the world, probably in the US or maybe in the UK. And yeah, they have a big face off around the end on Emilio Largo's ship, as he's basically I don't know what's the word. I'm not sure. I wouldn't say he's a sailor, but he's basically a dude who basically lives by the sea on his ship, basically. And that's the story of the film in a nutshell. I really enjoyed Thunderball. This is probably one of my favorite Bond movies, and in my opinion, is one of the more underrated James Bond movies. At least in my opinion, at least. I thought the villain in this movie was great, and the actor who played him, Adolfo Celli, I believe is what his name is. I thought he did a great job as the villain, and Emilio Largo is probably one of my favorite Bond villains in the series. Aside from that, I really like the action sequences, especially the fight scenes that were shot underwater towards the end of the film when I think it was the Americans or the British or both that were facing off against Largo's men underwater towards the end of the film. I thought those scenes that were shot underwater were really well done, especially the scenes before the fight scenes when one of the fighter jets was hijacked at some point in the movie. They were all really well shot, the underwater scenes, especially for a movie that came out in '65. But yeah, I had a lot of fun with this one. Good action, good music, and great set designs like always, like as I mentioned before in the other Bond films. But this is definitely one of the best James Bond movies in my opinion. Just a really, really fun film, and it was really entertaining. I don't have anything else to add, so I'm just going to give a Thunderball a 7.7 out of 10. Well, there you go. That's it for part 1. Thank you guys for watching this video. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, leave a comment below, subscribe, share the video, turn on notifications, yada, yada, yada. You get the rest. And part 2 will be coming soon. I can't guarantee it'll be the next movie review video that I do. It might be the second one I do after this video, but hey, it'll be coming out soon. But in the next review, I'll be reviewing the James Bond movies from You Only Live Twice and the 3 or 4 movies that came out after it. So those are the ones I'm going to cover in the next installment. But yeah, so anyways, until next time, stay tuned for part 2. And thanks for watching. And until next time, this is Keagan Shepard signing off. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. And yeah, take care, everybody. Peace out. Bye-bye.